Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you are listening in the world. Today, I'm going to be speaking with someone in Australia, so it's going to be my morning, his evening. He's called Constantine Georgiou. He was a very successful entrepreneur. He exited a business, made millions, but what he found is that didn't bring him happiness and joy. So he went on a real journey of self-discovery, and through that ended up going on kind of a deep spiritual journey, ended up getting into Tibetan Buddhism, and through that now has become actually a coach. He runs his own company called Ineffable, which he describes as a human potential accelerator. And through that, he is helping people with mindful self-discipline, emotional processing, meditation, and some of these Tibetan Buddhist practices. I think you'll find it interesting as he actually does some exercises with me live on the show. And in his work now, he has facilitated workshops, coaching for over 750 entrepreneurs. So he's done this with a lot of people. I certainly found it fascinating going through the exercise and kind of woke me up a bit when we did the practice. So let's get into it. So Constantine, welcome to the show. Thanks a lot for joining us all the way from Australia. I think you said it's 7 p.m. for you right now. Is that right?
Yeah, 7 p.m.
So we're opposite sides of the world, opposite time zone at 8 a.m. for me, but we're able to connect, which is amazing. Normally on the show, we start by talking about your own personal journey. So I know one of the things you said you wanted to talk about, and one of your philosophies is stop seeking, become a finder. But what I find is often our views of the world, they often come from our own personal journeys. And I know you've exited companies, you're now running very different type of business as a coach, but I was wondering if you could tell us your own personal journey and how you've arrived at some of your conclusions.
Yeah, look, I think I've always been a heuristic, someone who learns by doing. And we could talk theories and concepts till the cows come home, but at the end of the day, we don't really get anywhere. It's interesting and you can sound interesting and you can get kind of high in your own supply, but until you put it to the test within your own experience, everything is not very useful. And so I guess my journey started a long time ago, but I've been in tech for a long time and worked for some large organizations over the last 30 years, very recognized ones. But I never really enjoyed doing that. I thought there was something wrong with me. And then I got a life coach about, 20 years ago, before it was trendy. And I thought I had hacked everything else in my life except for the workplace and career. And she happened to be pretty amazing. And slowly but surely took me on a journey of self-discovery to discover that I was not all I thought I was in a really beautiful, graceful, very feminine way. And that kind of helped me realize, I'm not really built to be part of a Navy. I'm actually a pirate. And so I should be an entrepreneur. And, some of us some of us are born that way, I'm just anti-dogma. I just don't want to do that. Right. And those people who learn by doing are typically like that. Those people who learn through others, and that's okay. There's no judgment. We all need all sorts. But as an entrepreneur, I think, especially when you're living in a world of always being in beta, always A/B testing everything, testing your assumptions. We can break this down into all sorts of different things. But, it got to a point where I left a sales and marketing role in the big tech game around the Cisco and Salesforce and Microsoft ecosystems, and built along with amazing two co-founders, built an amazing business, which was called Veltio, which is ancient Greek for improvement. And initially it was meant to be about, helping organizations improve, understand the art and science of improvement. Subtext, finding flow. And then one thing led to another, because we actually built maturity assessments to help organizations understand the rate of their maturity rate. We ended up attracting a lot of attention from the big vendors to kind of push our wares, because we would highlight, like a management consultant, we would highlight some challenges. So in the end, we ended up building a partnership with Salesforce.com and implementing and doing a lot of innovative things with, top 100 companies in Australia and government departments, and using a little bit of management consulting and whatnot. But, that was interesting. That's a byproduct, though, of the culture that we wanted to build. And, for us, flow was really important. And we wanted to build a culture where people had, would pinch themselves and says to each other, basically say, I can't believe I'm getting paid for this. They had to make it fun. And then we got acquired. We had a lot of attention for that. And that was an interesting journey, experiencing an acquisition and going through the acquisition process in 2012, 13, which is a long time ago now, 10 years ago. Time flies. But I learned a lot from that experience. I needed therapy for about a year because I didn't realize that first world problem, sure, but it's actually an all world problem. Because if that's the goal, build a company, do a tech exit, get acquired, be wealthy, successful, but yet still feel that some level of guilt and shame because I sold the baby and I built a culture of like a family, and it felt like terrible. And I also felt trapped in not being able to express that as well. Even my board were kind of going, "Are you crazy? Don't talk about that." But after going, there were many different milestones, touch points along the way in terms of the spiritual path. But one of the key ones was getting to the end of that journey and reaching the proverbial mountaintop and having all this money and buying the dream home and the dream golf course and all that kind of stuff. And not soon after, within 3 months, realizing I'm no happier. In fact, this is terrible because I'm no happier. So what am I going to do? Am I going to double down and make more money after not being happy about it? So that was a big issue. So I had to do a lot of navel gazing, and I thought, why don't I see? Obviously I have some levels of discipline that might be a little bit above the average, because being able to, it's not only 1% of companies do successful exits in the world. So it's a terrible number, but it's the truth. So I thought, why don't I see if I can apply all of that discipline to find nirvana, happiness, joy, bliss, happiness internally, where all the sages and the gurus have been pointing to for some time, and try to apply it. So fundamentally, I think the way we kind of briefed was, I wanted to see if there was a there, the top of that mountain, the accomplishment, the seeking, the achieving, the go-getter, the type A, and and do an exit and be a millionaire and all that kind of stuff. And I didn't find it there. And now it's been about 10 years since going pretty deep down the rabbit hole, and I can honestly say there's definitely a here, definitely.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, go on.
No, I was just going to say, you mentioned there, and here. I think a lot of people listening will not be sure exactly what you're talking about. So what do you mean by those two things?
Well, we all operate out of a subconscious belief that there's something worth achieving out there. And when we get to that achievement, happily ever after, whether you believe that or not, that's the truth. Married, happily ever after. Millionaire, happily ever after. Tech exit, happily ever after. Not true. What happens after that? And that's the hidden sort of story that's really important as well, right? Because that's not pervasive. It can be for everyone. I'm not saying this is not the case for this is not a prescription for everyone, by the way.
Yeah.
But it's definitely something worth noting, because I put a lot of eggs in that basket, and it destroyed relationships, my marriage. I just dedicated almost, put myself into hospital just due to all the work that was required, and because of heart dysarrhythmia and all the stress. But instead of seeking that nirvana out there, I thought, let's go the other way and see if there's something there. And so I went down deeper paths, and have a lot of beautiful blessings from different teachers and teachings that I am very grateful for over the last 10 years. That kind of helped me build programs to help other entrepreneurs on that journey. So after the exit, Australia went through a bit of a ideas boom, because we were trying to move
Yeah.
away from just being a resources boom. And the Australian government spent a lot of money helping startups through incubator programs, accelerator programs, and other grants and whatnot. And I was asked to lead one of the first, one of the earliest ones, incubators. And that was great. I really enjoyed that. I actually realized I love teaching, especially from my own experience, especially other pirates. So, and with that came the opportunity to build bootcamp programs to prepare them for investor readiness, due diligence readiness, and also help them build resilience as entrepreneurs, which is a unique type of resilience, right?
Yeah.
That requires different types of resilience along the path, from seed, angel seed, Series A listing, the whole journey, if that's the journey you take.
Yeah.
It's not the prescribed journey, but most people think that is. Doesn't have to be. And what I learned is that just like executives, leaders, and CEOs and entrepreneurs, it's a very lonely sport. Even more lonely if you're an entrepreneur, because everyone thinks you're crazy because you're a pirate.
Yeah, 100%. I wanted to take a step back. So you said, you had the exit of this company. That was the there at the time. That's the thing you thought you were aiming for. And as you said, being an entrepreneur is lonely. Maybe when you got to the there, you thought that's what would provide you happiness. So how did you said there was a year where you needed therapy, etc. How did you feel in that year? What was kind of going through your head?
Grief. I didn't know whether I should have been happy about the success or recognize the grief of having abandoned in some ways the 30-person team that we had built, which I put my heart and soul into. I also felt lost because I was no longer as busy, right? I spent a couple of years spending time with other leaders and entrepreneurs around the world trying to sort of figure this out a little bit. But what I realized is when you're really busy, there's no room for any of your unprocessed trauma, unprocessed emotions to get processed. And then when you do have an exit, and all of a sudden you kind of go, on the islands having, sucking back some Long Island iced teas, is when all those skeletons and those they come out of nowhere, right? And I got hit really bad. There was a period where I was concerned for my life in terms of suicidal ruminations and various other things, which is crazy because I was liquid. There was no reason for it, no practical reason that you could point to it. But that's what happened. And there was a lot of other different reasons, I guess. But, I had a lot of amazing support from amazing people, including my ex-business partners, co-founders, one of which really, really helped me have the first powerful metaphysical experience that saved my life and really put me on the track to discover nirvana. Yeah.
So as you said, you're in this situation. I think you said, getting loads more money, working really hard is not the answer because I've already done that. It didn't bring me happiness. So you went down more of a spiritual path. What were some of the first steps you took in that year to kind of go towards the journey you're on at the moment?
I tried to get busy again because that's what I knew, but that didn't work. But basically what I was really getting into at that time, I was engaged in the work of Byron Katie, which is kind of cognitive behavior therapy. So very conceptual rationalism in terms of figuring out stuff. And and that was saving my life day to day from all the rumination. But then, I had a mystical lunch with my ex-co-founder who had just come back from the Amazon and had done ayahuasca pretty heavily back in the 2014, 13, 14. And he was just telling me about his experiences, and I hung around with him for a long time, for about a week or two. And at one stage, he noticed that I wasn't well, and he asked me, "Are you okay?" And I said, "No, I think I'm going to check out." And that having a spirit brother like that, someone who's really in your corner, he in his beautiful, skillful means, having gone through ceremony with ayahuasca, which can be very hellish, especially for your ego. He basically said, "Oh, have you tried everything?" I said, "Yeah, I have. I'm really, dedicated to trying to find a solution to this damn thing." He said, "But have you tried surrender?" And I said, I don't know how to do that. How do you surrender to this? This thing feels like it's going to take over, and I'm going to regret letting it loose." And he said, "Well, you haven't tried it, so how do you know it's not going to work?" And that was checkmate for me. And the rest of it was a mystical story that your listeners probably don't want to hear, but there was purging, there was a dropping down to the ground, there was a full-on physical experience where after that experience I've had no anxiety. And I used to wake up every day at 3:30 with anxiety and rock myself out of bed. So that was demonstrable. And I don't know, at a metaphysical level, it felt like ayahuasca came through, and she through him because he was fresh off the boat. But also for me, it was just letting go of the worst thing that I feared the most. So, yeah.
So this was while you were with him, you were having this experience with the purging, or?
Yeah. He held my hand and took me out of the restaurant where we thought someone was going to call the police because it was getting pretty crazy. Wow. And then we walk into a car park where it was a bit more private, and he was sort of facilitating me with some qigong, and all of a sudden I felt like I was about to blank out because I was going into this hyperventilating and getting angry and crying and then coming back up into anger. And I hear a voice, just as I'm about to blank out, I hear a voice in the back of my head say, "If it's here, it's because you can handle it." And right at that moment, there was a release. And he was really, he's definitely someone to have in your corner. But and then having had that experience, I said, "Oh wow, there really is something else. Yeah. There really is another way." And then I did go to Byron Katie's retreat in the States, and I spent 9 days there, and I had amazing experiences. Even though she's very rational and that she never talks about the woo-woo stuff, by cognitively doing meditation, the conceptual level and moving things around, I had my first experience of being present in the presence of nirvana, joy, bliss, happiness. That's what happened. It was with me for days.
And so you said
I couldn't explain it.
So that was a 9-day retreat. It was like a silent meditation retreat, or how did it work?
No, it's using her process of the work, or process of inquiry, 4 questions and turnarounds. I can go into that if you want.
Yeah,
really
please.
Amazing.
That'd be great.
Very simple. It's very simple, but very bloody powerful. So the 4 questions are, and I can role play it a little bit, really simple. Okay. Like just simply, typically, we may have a problem with one of our parents, and it could be something to do like my father doesn't love me or my mother doesn't love me. And you ask the question, is it true? Yes. I'm role playing here. Is it absolutely true? Second question, is it absolutely true that your father doesn't love you? You can get a third-party auditor to audit that. Maybe not. Okay, so there's a possibility that it may not be true that your father doesn't love you. Yeah, sure. Okay, third question, what happens when you believe the thought your father doesn't love you? What happens to you? How do you react? How do you respond when you walk around the world or be in his environment or situations at home when you believe that thought? And then you run through and take some time. The first few questions are typically, don't worry about them. It's always the beyond the first 3 answers, I should say. First 3 answers. And typically what you find is, you come up with, actually, I end up talking badly behind him. I don't respond to his emails or whatever it might be. And terrible behavior or shut down. It could be something to do with the way you treat yourself. And then the fourth question is, who would you be without the thought in that situation? If you couldn't think the thought, my father doesn't love me, and you couldn't think the thought for whatever reason, there was some kind of issue with your brain, you couldn't think that thought, who would you be in that situation? And then you start to notice that certain things will arise. I'd be more attentive. I'd be responsive. I'd talk kindly about him. I'd be really curious about how his life is going. I'd be more receptive to I'd be more open to maybe ways that he is loving me, possibly, because you wouldn't be able to think of those. So there's a possibility that those 4 questions are open up cognitively.
Yeah.
Another possibility. But the magic happens at the turnarounds, which is, can you turn the initial judgment around of my dad doesn't love me? Can you turn it around to at least the opposite, the other, or the self? The opposite might be, dad does love me. Okay, can you give me 2 or 3 examples of where that is true? That has been true in the past. Oh, I noticed that, he worked pretty hard to keep me safe and sheltered and fed. And actually, he bought me my first computer. I realized that. Okay, so there's some evidence there that he does love you. Yeah. Okay, can you turn it around to, again, and you may find, I don't love myself. Oh, 2 or 3 examples of that, and you can start to see that. So, or I turn it around again. I don't love dad. Give me 2 or 3 examples of that, and run through those, and you start to realize, oh, I can have compassion for dad if he does love me, because I don't love him. It's good enough for him. It's good enough for me. That opens up a little bit more, and then you can realize, really, the problem is that you don't love yourself, and you find that yourself. I don't respectfully or healthily say no to my father in certain circumstances. Or, I give away my power. Or it could be in other ways where I don't look after myself. And so what happens is that course level, this is pretty interesting, actually, we're going here, the course level, tight, absolutely true belief that dad doesn't love me starts to become like particles and waves, and they start to vibrate in a metaphorical way of speaking. But what happens is you start to get liberated from them, because those beliefs don't hold on to you anymore, and you start to become a bit open, and it changes the way you see the world, you operate. And that was transformational. And she does some other things. So we do that every day on different topics, and it could be to do with men versus women, women versus men. It could be parents. It could be learning how to say a healthy no, which you spend a whole day on. Another day we get I just remembered that she tries to keep some of these things secret on purpose so that people are surprised. I'm going to leave it at that. Let me just say, it's definitely worth going if you've never been on a retreat as a beginner retreat. Yeah, she is absolutely masterful.
So something that caught my attention there was how to say a healthy no, because I definitely went through the experience myself when I first started managing people, even when I worked for another company or when I had my own company, of like people pleasing, and then realizing in the short term maybe that's good, but in the long term it just causes more damage. And even yesterday I had a conversation with a colleague who I noticed has become a bit of a yes man, and I said to him, you should, if I give you a task and you don't think it's the right thing, you should challenge me, right? Versus just saying it, being a yes person. I don't want you to be a yes person. You're going to gain more of my respect from actually saying no sometimes. But yeah, what kind of tactics did she teach you with that, having a healthy
lot of role
no, as
playing.
you said?
Yeah, a lot of role playing, but even just the simple syntax. Considering out of the 9 days, we spend one whole day on that, it's a major issue for everyone. Everyone. There's 300 people there, 300. So one of the things that you do is, like, she would put herself in your position, and someone would just fire stuff at her and all sorts of demands, and she would respond beautifully and skillfully. So you just basically say to me, hey, I really want you to do this for me and blah, blah, blah. And I feel that, I need to push back and say no. I would say, I appreciate what you're saying. And on that merit and considering my workload, it's going to have to be a no for now.
Yeah.
And then you hold a pause, and that's it. It's the end of the conversation. There's nothing else.
Yeah.
That's the hardest part, that part.
Yeah.
And you can see, like, there's weak, and your body goes weak when you try to do that. But but the more you do that, the more you kind of go, actually, no, because I know this is the way that we override it. This is the 3rd time today I'll be talking about this, which is funny. The way you override it is a no to you is a yes to me. And in the spirit of being resilient and making sure we're resourceful, and in the spirit of well-being at work especially, right, it's important, because what happens is we have this false economy that we have capacity in the business if everyone's saying yes. But I'd rather people say no, because then I can coordinate and project manage around that. If I know that everyone's a yes, then I'm just throwing shit down the pike, but nothing's getting done because everyone wants just want to appease the CEO or the boss or whatever. So teaching people, especially in teams as entrepreneurs and leaders, how to say a healthy no, big deal.
Yeah, for sure. So it sounds like after you had this experience where you changed in a way, you surrendered, you almost became a student. It seems like you were going to this 9-day retreat. You were like learning about a lot of different things.
Yeah. I went through a long and prolonged ego death, going through marriage breakup, and just really, getting rid of a lot of baggage, not the marriage, like assets and debts, and like I literally went down to couch surfing, and I really enjoyed that. I actually found it quite liberating. And it's been a little bit of a ride to the point where I don't really own much these days. My mother is in her 80s and she's got some health challenges, so I look after her. So I got to that point where, after a little while, I got to a point where I became a renunciate. So I wanted to not be in an intimate relationship, so that I could just go into my cave for a while and see if I can overcome loneliness, which was a surprising challenge. I didn't realize I wasn't lonely. I've never been lonely, never been alone, until you're alone and you realize, holy shit, what is this thing?
Yeah.
What is this? And you start to realize the numbing reactions and the bypassing reactions that you put in place to keep yourself from being alone. And then it just gets to a point you start to make terrible decisions out of the avoidance of wanting to be alone, out of the avoidance of loneliness. But then work through that, and look, the path has been an interesting and unfolding one, especially in the last 4 or 5 years, where I've more merged into Tibetan and Kashmiri practices, Kashmiri Shaivism, and Tibetan Mahamudra and Dzogchen, and Bon, which are kind of like, the flavor really is Mahamudra and Dzogchen, and this is like nature of mind practices.
Okay. Well, yeah, I think most people listening, I know a bit about Tibetan stuff, not some of the other things you said, but yeah, if you could run us through what this is and why it's useful for you and for other people.
Yeah. Personally, this is just my experience. I've always wanted the sharpest tool in the shed and the most efficient. Even when I met my teachers and I was like, I guess, auditing them before selecting them, I just said, what's the one thing? What's the one thing? And what I discovered is learning how to access awareness of awareness is very, very liberating immediately. Especially when you can do it in the body. So the body never stresses. The body's always in the present. The body's already awakened. But we live so much up here for many different reasons. And we rarely, and as a result, we're living in concepts, and concepts are dead. Concepts are dead. There's a reason why we live in concepts. They're efficient. They're addictive. We can communicate, you and I, with words this way, and other side of the planet, and we kind of get what we're saying, but there's not a lot of richness to it. There's not a lot of depth. So I may be using words like tantra, but your interpretation of that word may be totally different to my interpretation. So, it's good, but it's also not good. And what happens is when we live out of that world, we commodify everything and we feel nothing, and therefore we are zombies. So direct experience practices are presence practices, or awareness practices, or experience practices, where it's like the difference between reading the menu of a restaurant and salivating and eating the food. Direct experience is eating the food.
Yeah.
Everything else conceptually is going, oh, that looks like a nice picture, and that description is pretty nice. it sounds amazing, but you don't know until you've eaten the food. So direct experience is the direct experience of it all. And so Tibetan Buddhism have had a lot of multi-years and multiple masters, and probably more awakened individuals. It might be a statement that triggers people. But in my experience, being, a scientist of my own first-person experience, it's definitely a here. And so Tibetan Buddhist practices have multi-years of nature of mind practices, whereas in the West, we only have 200 years of nature of mind practices. And yes, we have more technology and it's much more modern, but a lot of the theories and the philosophies and the practices have been put to the test, and they all prove correct. Showing neurocorrelates in the brain that they've never seen in humans before, such as super high gamma in the parietal cortex and PCC, with particular practices. And so what happens is you start to, with practice, you can get a glimpse of these immediately without any practice, but stabilizing in them allows you to have access to a world that is non-ordinary to non-ordinary. So everything starts to become more like a wave and particles, and everything's changing and going. Everything's coming and going, versus it being solid, fixed, and pretty much dead. So, we can do one of these little practices on here. It's pretty simple.
Well, I was going to, I was going to ask in terms of practical, is this through meditation, breathing? How do you do it?
Yeah, like there's multiple different doorways to the most amazing nirvana room. But, one way is through a dialectic even. So being able to kind of speak at it and use an inquiry process. A simple way might be to, notice an experience around your body right now and simply continue to take interest and steer the mind back to the experience. So, for example, you might have your foot on the ground right now, right? Which of your feet feels more alert? More
the
in
right
your
one.
awareness?
Yeah, right one.
Why?
It's kind of almost on like a bit of a tiptoe. It feels more exaggerated. Yeah.
Very good. Don't move it at all. Okay.
Cool.
So what does it feel like to be your foot right now?
It feels nice to have it sounds weird, but nice to have the support of the floor in a way.
Okay. That was a concept. All right.
Yeah.
But that's okay. This is part of the process. So we're going to go beyond. So that's the surface layer. Tell me again. So give it another go. What does it feel like to be your foot right now?
It's almost, there's like an energy center there in a way.
There we go.
Yeah.
So let's. I'm just going to. I'll guide you here with some dialectic. Just notice the shape.
Yeah. Okay.
Just notice the shape.
Yep.
Now notice is there a color? Just be curious about the qualities, the felt experience.
Okay. Yeah.
Doesn't have to be. Notice the temperature. Is it cool? Is it warm? Is it cool outside, warm inside the foot?
Yeah, cool outside, warm inside.
Yeah, cool. Is it solid?
Yeah, again, it's almost solid on the outside, hollow on the inside.
Okay. Yeah. Stay with it. Keep inquiring. Keep bringing the mind back to it. You can have your eyes closed. Just the more you do this, and more take a really big interest on it through these questions, and you just simply, not a lot of effort, just like answer the question: does it have a shape? Is the shape changing now? Just keep bringing it back curiously. You don't have to do anything. You're just noticing. All right, now notice, is there energy? In other words, is it moving?
Yeah.
In other words, are you noticing pixels moving? If you be even more curious and going to go, oh, this pixel's moving, interesting. Move into it even more, steering the mind and intensifying, and start to notice the space between the pixels get bigger and bigger.
Yeah.
And then simply now notice, what does it feel to be your foot right now? Has it changed?
Yeah, it has changed. It's almost difficult to describe in words, though, how it's changed.
Perfect.
Yeah.
It's ineffable.
Yeah.
So simply, as you saw there, pretty simply, that was a direct experience. And you just went from concept, right? Efficiency
Mm.
to right? Of your own body.
Yeah.
And so you may ask, so what? And I'll go, yeah, so what? Basically, not everything is as it seems, and we're operating out of concepts, which is beautiful for the purposes of efficiency. But if you can expand this out to multiple layers, right? To get to a certain point where the space between the pixels and the experience takes over everything, absolutely everything, including your sense of self. And then everything turns into emptiness. And then from emptiness, you can come back as emptiness and emanate back into as yourself, Michael. But you start to realize that everything is kind of changing, coming and going spontaneously. So not everything's so serious. We'll just keep it at that. Like, even at that level, right? Like even another person, which is even more ethereal, like another person, right? It's a total concept.
Yeah.
But from here, you can drop into non-duality and you can see that actually there's no edges or boundaries to this. And actually it's timeless.
Yeah.
Timeless, spacious, boundless, non-dual. That's called the natural state in Tibetan, in Mahamudra, Tibetan Buddhism. But when you can kind of go, the more you practice this and just ask the question, everything's changing, coming and going, then you can actually feel it as you talk right now. And as you get skillful, you start to notice that everything that you can feel the vibration. And after a while, it starts to feel great.
Mm.
And when you are in situations where you have an aggressive dialogue with someone, or an argument, whatever, it becomes really vibrant, right? Or if you're in love, it becomes it's really rich. And this is what we're missing. This is what we're missing.
Do you have to control, like you said, if you're feeling that vibration in through anger in an argument or through love, do you almost have to control that in a way, or how does that work?
No. It's difficult to explain why you don't have to control it. You're no longer attached to the reason you hate the person or are angry as being fixed. So you can take it or leave it. And you kind of go, that makes me feel angry. Because your direct experience of anger is changing.
Yeah.
It's not, I definitely feel anger for this reason. I'm trying to find a book here. For this reason. It's no longer like that anymore. And everything's like a bit of a joke.
Yeah. So
on the one side, there's that, which is the low side, right? On the high side, then, oh my God, everything's up for grabs. Because there's no limit. There's no limit now. And I have way, way more room, way, way more space.
So you wanted to, I know one of the things you wanted to talk about, and this comes up with a lot of your clients, is around like concentration and balance and presence, whether that's in the workplace or whether that's in home, if we have like a crazy family life. So let's imagine you're stressed in your day-to-day for whatever reason. We're all stressed for different reasons. I think there's studies about stress levels going up in the West. How can you apply some of these practices? What would you do practically?
Well, first and foremost, you need self-awareness, and like you need to be able to monitor your state. How do you feel? How am I feeling right now? Like this question, how is my foot feeling? How does it feel to be Michael right now? And look, concentration helps because you're training your metacognitive awareness, a part of the brain that monitors your state, right, to come online more often, to notice that when you're being distracted and chasing dopamine. And, the last defense is metacognitive awareness. Obviously, our devices, despite all the safety features and it's not working, right? I've been a technologist all my life. It's not working. I had a meeting recently with a top 4 And the head of innovation had 2 Apple Watches. I said, how's it working for you? He goes, have you got any tech for this? No, we don't. But you can retrain, go to the gym to retrain metacognitive awareness to come bring it online. But also what that does is not only from a functional perspective, help you stay more concentrated for longer periods of time without partializing, right?
Yeah.
So that you can drop into flow. And that direct experience is like your experience of what you're doing becomes subtle. It starts to get wavy, like similar to your foot. And then you go, this is weird. And I love it. Versus it being, oh, fucking this out, right? And then what also happens is you can stay close to the territory of being concentrated, being present to loved ones' conversations, your bosses, your colleagues, your customers, right? And being able to steer the mind. But also what happens is the mind gets organized, going from 10 billion things attacking you to sequentially coming at you all at once, single point focus. So there's this automaticness, and you can access automaticness. And it actually feels good for some reason, but it does. There's a little bit of calm, equanimity. Different people will experience different things, but even a little bit of subtle bliss. So, and when you feel great, you're never going to get angry. Right? But so concentration in the workplace is a really big deal, and it's something that I talk about, and it's something that my teachers have taught me, and it's definitely something that's improved my life by a magnitude of more than 10, to the point where I don't have any course level thoughts anymore. They don't attack me. And it's not to get rid of them, because it's important to have content, but also because you can't stop thoughts. But if it's anything, it's just latent and background stuff.
Yeah.
It's never this sort of shouting, critical, get out of bed, or you're not enough at 3:30 a.m. And that used to cause a lot of, anxiety for me. And if it was the case, now I would see it, oh, you're trying to talk to me. What is it? Maybe I've missed something. Thank you for the wisdom. So you have a healthy relationship. But also, if I really wanted to cut through, then you just turn awareness back on itself, and it immediately disappears like that.
I start bringing my awareness to my foot next time I'm at this desk, feeling stressed. I have your voice in my head with the questions. Last topic I wanted to discuss was biofeedback. I have no idea what biofeedback is. I'm sure many people won't. Right. So could you explain what you mean by this term?
Mm-hmm. Using technology to monitor your state. So things like the Oura ring, OURA, that monitors your sleep, but it also monitors your like a Fitbit and whatnot. That's biofeedback. But you can use biofeedback devices to monitor your stress. There's a lot more tech coming out. Oura's actually got a new stress capability as well. There are the Muse headset, which I have over there, and the Focus Calm headsets that you can use during meditation to monitor how much calm you have under pressure.
Yeah.
So you can retrain the brain to notice, which is useful, because I thought I was a great meditator for about 10 years until I got the Muse headset and I realized I was kidding myself, which was a beautiful awakening. I couldn't crack 30% concentrated until I got it, and then, really doubled down, because it showed me that I had a blind spot. And, get to a point where with retraining, it's possible. I can't get below 90%. And so using biofeedback devices is really important. There's a great app, which I think we talked about in the prep, called Immersion, or best, I think on the Apple Store, it's called Tuesday, or Best Tuesday Ever. I don't know why Tuesday is the best Tuesday, but basically what it does is works on an Apple Watch and some other wearable devices to monitor how immersed you are. In other words, how much you love something and how much psychological safety you're experiencing, which is a byproduct of improved dopamine and dopamine and oxytocin, and how that affects the bloodstream. And it's really, really interesting, because then you can kind of go, all right, I'm in a meeting with Michael now. I'm going to put on the app. I'm going to see how immersed I am. And then you can actually, if you do that on a team-based level, you can kind of see, all right, maybe we need to be a little bit more jazzy about the way we're communicating to our people, because they're a little bit bored. Or this person here, it's actually can be predictive, can be predictive. You can actually use it to say like 2 days ahead of someone's having a breakdown, you can figure out predictively.
Really? Well, very interesting.
Yeah.
So with the
biofeedback, really interesting.
How would that, so that could integrate on like a Zoom call like this, and it could pick up people's, or is it more on an actual person?
It'll be on my Apple Watch, which is over there.
Yeah.
And it's synchronized to my calendar, and it'll come up with a pop and say, do you want to monitor your immersion for this meeting? And I go, yeah, sure.
Got it, yeah.
And I hit it, and it just monitors in the background, and then it has a graph, and there's you can consolidate the information on a team-based level. But for me personally, I can kind of go, yeah, I really like spending time with Michael, but I want to do more of that. There's actually a lot of multiple different applications, such as speed dating. So you can look at, if you had 5 people they were speed dating with, and you can see who did my heart like the most, right? It is a shame that we're using tech to tell us these things, but this is where we've got to, because we're so disembodied.
Yeah, very interesting. Yeah, because that kind of what you're talking about, that brings up a point I was going to bring up, which is I've never done the rings or the watches, or I leave my phone in another room, and since I started doing that, I sleep much better. And I still have the alarm on it that goes in the outside room. It just about wakes me up, and hopefully I wake up naturally. But yeah, in terms of like tech around meditation, because almost one of the problems we have, and we've done podcasts on this as well, is tech addiction, phone addiction, social media addiction. So that if we're using tech for meditation, I guess playing devil's advocate, do you think that's really like the right solution?
It's a great conversation, and it's a debate that I've had with my other business partner, my co-founder, who went, digital hygiene, went off total tech, and I said, no, I'm going to improve metacognitive awareness and change nothing, and I think I'm winning, because I've still got the apps there, right? I could go and burn my whole evening on Instagram and whatever, but I don't, and my Ura data is there, and what you get with improved metacognitive awareness is more access to decision. I decide to whether I want to go off and get dopamine hits for the next, and occasionally I do. I allow myself 5 or 10 minutes, and it's really hard to get off. So I my heart breaks open, because I go, people, like, they don't know this is crack cocaine. This is terrible, especially on things like TikTok, where it's just like soundbite, like, and really rich and really funny and really gorgeous and really whatever. It's honestly at a large scale, it's really concerning. But my mind is a temple, and I preserve it. So, and I'm not going to let billion dollar companies hack my mind. There's a great book on this called Stolen Focus, and it's not necessarily a conspiracy, it's just a business model, but there are many, many reasons why it's a problem. And one of the biggest problems is form factor. Form factor. It makes you feel tight. You're already stressed when you're reading this versus reading on a big screen, right?
Very
you're already tight.
Yeah, I found that I used to read books on my phone, and then I bought a Kindle, and then I just found the reading experience much richer just by reading an actual physical book, and it may be related to what you just said.
Yeah, exactly. But also some interesting data around the number of books being read on all-time lows, the number of hours that a topic trends on Twitter, all-time lows. Everything's just like, our attention spans are now less than a goldfish. So 8 seconds versus 9 seconds on average, according to Microsoft. So training metacognitive awareness is now an edge. Being concentrated is a competitive advantage.
Well, that's why you've got, I'm sure you've got a lot of happy clients who you're helping concentrate.
And it's really interesting to see within 3 sessions, people are saying, no way. I'm talking about people who wake up with all sorts of really terrible thoughts, to like having to then go do a little bit of CBT to kind of go, where do my terrible thoughts go? I like them. You realize your identity was attached to having negative thoughts, and you kind of go, yeah, well, that's gone. It's finished. You've already transcended that. Yeah, there's a possibility. It's everyone's birthright. And, what I do with Ineffable, which is my coaching practice, to give it a plug, is I help people improve focus, do some somatic emotional processing healing that possibly gets in the way and keeps them in terrible patterns. And I also take them on what's called an ineffable journey to get to more awakened states.
Fantastic. Well, yeah, I think you shared some of your links with us, Instagram, website, etc. Is there any other resources you want to put in the show notes that you think would be useful for people to look at?
Well, I mean, I've got a few blog articles there, but there's some. If anyone is interested, they can obviously leave comments on this, and there's some really good research that proves all the neurocorrelates of the. And this mindfulness is important, but it's only the first half step in the journey.
Yeah. Well, on that note, that's a great way to finish. Well, yeah, thanks a lot, Constantine. I've learned a lot today. Enjoyed the foot practice. So yeah, thanks a lot for your time.
Thank you.
So today, I think we had that classic journey that's come up a lot on the show, getting to what you think is the top of the mountain, where you made a load of money materially and thinking, hey, that's going to bring me happiness, and then you get there and you're actually more depressed than ever. As Constantine said, he needed that journey of going through therapy, going through these practices, and then he had that meeting with his friend where he just totally surrendered. And I think it was interesting because it shows you don't necessarily need meditation or ayahuasca or whatever it is to have that process of surrender, but sometimes you can just go through that on the spot. You're in such a desperate moment and you're in your head thinking of all these things, and you just need to surrender to the moment, to God, to the universe, whatever your beliefs are. And then some of the practices he talked about with Buddhism and Tibetan Buddhism, which he's doing, is quite interesting in the awareness of awareness. And finally, obviously, we had the interesting conversation at the end around biofeedback and whether technology is really the solution to these things. But obviously, Constantine thinks it is, and I know that is the case for a lot of people. So if you found anything interesting today, please share it with friends. I'm also going to ask a favor of all of you. If you could write a review, if you like this podcast, either on Spotify or Apple, that's really appreciated as it helps get the word out there. Subscribe to us. You can see all the episodes, whether that's on YouTube or your favorite podcast platform. And I'll see you next week on the next episode.